Hi everyone. One of the greatest joys in my life has been creating and designing my very beautiful reimagined Starship Enterprise A for Star Trek, all free and fan-based. My favourite all-time Star Trek film is Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, followed very closely by the original motion picture. As the Kirk era is my favourite of all, I wanted my design to somehow fit into the Kirk era timeline. So I decided that my Enterprise would be what the A could have been if it was built as a totally new design class, instead of just submitting to reusing the Constitution class again. As such, she was primarily designed as a revved up, sleek cross between Refit and Excelsior, as this is what I always envisaged she would be like as the new A for Kirk and crew on their return voyage home at the end of Star Trek IV. She was designed in the space of about a month, hand-drawn in technical design of all elevations and side cross-section. And this was done over 20 years ago, back in early 1993, when I was 20, inspired from a very loose sketch of the side and front I did much earlier in 1988 that was sitting on the shelf up till this time. Around this time in 1992, I was in my first year of studies at college, studying for an associate diploma in graphic design. However, later in the year around Christmas time, I very traumatically suffered a most severe mental breakdown due to extremely cruel psychological abuse inflicted upon me from my then college sweetheart, who I loved dearly. But very sadly, all she did for most of the time was play very cruel, nasty mind games with me that eventually led to my breakdown at the end of the year then. During my recovery in early 1993, I spent my recovery time refining and finishing the designs of my Enterprise, all hand-drawn with technical instruments, with lead pencils on A3 tracing paper. The time spent doing this was very therapeutic for me to get my concentration back and my creativity flowing confidently once again. After about a month, I had finished the design up to a standard I was most happy with. Even though I could never really visualize her properly and accurately in perspective in my mind, even when I was and am well, at the time I was confident that if I designed all her elevations well proportionally so, then she was bound to work well and look good in perspective. Many years later, with the CGI model of her built in mid-2014, she has surpassed my design dreams immensely as far as how she looks in perspective, not just from one or two angles, but all angles. Many years later also, I came to learn that her proportions naturally matched the Fibonacci proportions of Matt Jeffries' original configuration design of the Enterprise. What I found most astonishing about this is that many talented architects will meticulously design mathematically according to Fibonacci proportions, just as Matt Jeffries did with the original Enterprise. However, with my design, it was all done naturally by eye, just by my good natural skill and creativity for pleasing aesthetic proportion. And just remember this was all done when I was recovering from a severe psychological state of being. Considering just how beautiful my Enterprise design turned out to be when compared to Enterprises D and E, I think even knowing that that is how she came to be will greatly humble the likes of the extremely talented Star Trek professionals like Andrew Probert, Doug Drexler and John Eves. And also, nor has she dated in any way at all these years later, which is always a true sign of a well-mastered design always in vogue. When I finished the design in early 1993, I was to discover at this time, very surprisingly so, that the creator of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, passed away 2 years earlier in 1991, on October 24, my birthday, which just also happens to be United Nations Day, the very ideal of global unity and peace that Gene envisaged all along for Star Trek and our future. So in some sentimental, destined way, I share a continuing generation link with Gene, which I find just as wonderful and am very grateful for, not only in an earthly sense, but very much a spiritual sense as well. If Gene were alive today, I think he would not even hesitate for a second to have my enterprise be the new one for Star Trek, just as many followers out there have very rightly said also. I totally love my Enterprise A, and I am not abashed in any way at all to openly say so. People say that you are arrogant up yourself and have no humility if you say such things like you love what you do and what you create. I do not agree with this very insecure, somewhat jealous, contemptuous way of thinking in any way whatsoever. I'm sure the likes of Matt Jeffries, Andrew Probert, Doug Drexler and John Eves totally loved their creative works and ideas they did to make their enterprises. And even though they had no need to say so, the only difference between them and me is that they had very professional outlets to receive global admiration and praise. Even though my work is not of Hollywood, and nor would I ever want it to be either, I have already received many wonderful, inspiring and encouraging feedback, very much on a global scale now. I already consider my work a great success, even in these early stages of her film productions. And the way things are going, my enterprise is set long term for a very, very bright future to be greatly enjoyed by everyone all over the planet, everywhere. Around 1994, I attended a Star Trek convention at Sydney's Darling Harbour in the lead up to the release of Star Trek VII Generations. Taking my portfolio of my Enterprise design along to the convention, I met one of the guest speakers, special effects artist Roger Sides, who worked on the Borg ship model. Talking one-to-one with Roger at his stand, we chatted for a good time looking over my design, which he liked very much. He liked my design so much that he even invited me along to the after party. But for some immature, shy reason on my part, I politely said no. Who knows where I'd be now if I'd said yes to him back then. I've often wondered that. In 1999, I decided to freely send my designs to Majel Roddenberry, which she very kindly replied to directly, informing me that they were added to the archives. As much as she praised my designs, however, she informed me at the time that Star Trek was not going to continue after the new millennium. How wrong she was about that. Over the years since 1993, when I finished the design, I worked on her here and there, refining her proportions even more so, such as shortening the saucer length at the front and making the nacelles slightly longer, as proportionally wise, if the saucer becomes longer in length than the nacelles, then the overall balance of the design becomes compromised proportion-wise. By the time of the new millennium, I had also created design work on the interiors, as well as making a computer-generated version of the cross-section from the original hand-drawn colour plans. As well as designing new Starfleet uniforms, I had also written a screenplay trilogy for my Enterprise A, set between the times of Star Trek's 4 and 6. Much later in 2006, news was released that Star Trek was going to be revamped into a new movie prequel. And once I heard the early news of this, I again sent my designs very freely to Paramount, this time addressed to Enterprise E-designer John Eaves. After a month of not hearing anything, I decided to call the studios at Paramount in LA, and after explaining the situation, I was given John's home number, so I called him. I was fortunate to speak to him a couple of times on the phone, and we discussed my portfolio sent to him, which he got. But nothing was mentioned about the possibilities of my Enterprise being used. Plus, I did not want to push the issue with him either. I thought if it was good enough, and if he did show it to the production team, then they should have been willing to take her on board, especially after I gave her to them for free. But obviously that was not meant to be. In late 2006, I made my first documentary portfolio film of my Enterprise design, which has been a great success and has had just as much a great following on the web, with over 200,000 hits on YouTube now. Being 4 years on the web, this allowed for great global exposure of my design, and eventually this led to her wonderful new life as a CGI model for film animation that came to be in early 2014, when Lisbon-based CGI modeler Nuno Guerreiro offered to build her, then handing her over into the brilliant genius hands of Raul Mamoro, one of the best fan-based CGI modelers for Star Trek on the planet right now. Raul loved my design so much that he built her all for free. And considering that the model is of Hollywood standard, she is worth many millions in my good mystical books, to say nothing of what my design is worth on its own merit alone. I'm so extremely grateful and thankful to Raul for all his very excellent work done on her, to allow her to be greatly enjoyed by us all now. Once Raul had finished the main ship, the final finishing details and colour scheme was completed by my Facebook buddy Luke Wilkins, and more recently by my old tech buddy Craig Bias, who are both professional CGI modelers. Now, with the wonderful world of CGI opened up for her, the future is set long-term for her. Along with other documentaries made about her now, I have teamed up with the brilliant Chris Adams of Hardwire Productions, who specialises in Starship CGI film animation for Star Trek, fan-based. When I saw Chris's fantastic work online, I really wanted him to be the one to film her. And after he saw my design, he was very happy to take her up and team up with me. We are only in our first year of film production, but we have already made a very beautiful launch film and a second film also. And I've further scripted ideas for 2 more films to come. So stay tuned for all that and much more. This winter I will be finishing off the interior plans that I began putting together last winter, and this will hopefully set the way for interior animation walkthroughs that I hope will happen in the not too distant future. Once all the plans are finished, I will be compiling a concise technical manual of her at the start of 2017, hopefully in all media formats. And eventually, when the time is right, I will release the CGI model of her to be able to be printed as a 3D model, both on small and large scales. And with all the hype of the 50th anniversary of Star Trek this year, many followers of my work have said that she should have been the new Enterprise for the new films and upcoming TV series. Also too, wonderful suggestions have been said that she should be displayed in a famous museum somewhere as a large-scale model to inspire future space designers long into the future. As it would not surprise me at all if sometime in the future, 200 years from now, some good-natured, selfless philanthropist builds her for real, for all of humanity to greatly enjoy trekking around the solar system and deeper galaxy maybe. So that's her brilliant journey so far. Seeing my beautiful reimagined Enterprise A come to life has been one of the greatest achievements in my life. I love my Enterprise so very much, and it gives me so much satisfaction to make her be the very best she can be for you all to greatly enjoy. It is a great pleasure to be able to share my dreams of my Enterprise with you all. And if you freely give me the chance to do so, I will very freely give you the very best of my creativity and her, for us all to greatly enjoy long into the future. As Captain Jean-Luc Picard would say, make it so. Thanks so much for watching everyone, and God bless.